Before we took the break, I think the member from Easton had asked a question. Is the Honourable Minister in a position to add any more to it, or I had said we would entertain one more question? Honourable Minister.
Madam Chair, for the sake of clarity, my understanding is that the question which was raised by the member from East End was in respect of the merchant shipping fees regulations 2014 and the fact that they were gazetted on the 25th of July 2014. And that was prior to, obviously, the amendment which we're seeking to bring here today. If I have omitted anything in respect of that summary, perhaps a member could clarify. Otherwise, I'll go on to respond. Thank you. Madam Chair, the bill, as we know, seeks to repeal Section 4621A. That subsection sets out coercive fees which are paid to the Treasury. In my earlier responses to the member on his questions, I indicated that the intention was that these regulations, which I did not have to hand at the time, would be published contemporaneously with the amendment to the law. We now know that they were published ahead of that on the 25th of July. They were made pursuant to Section 459 of the Merchant Shipping Law 2011, which the Honourable Attorney General had read to this committee, indicating that Cabinet would have the power to make these regulations. The regulations and the specific regulation which I have referred to, and I will read again, Madam Chair, says in Regulation 5.1, the Chief Executive Officer may, in accordance with the policies of the authority and in relation to non-coercive revenue, fix the fees and charges for services and make any dispositions in relation thereto in accordance with the policies of the authority. So this is in relation to non-coercive revenue, whatever that may be from time to time. The fees which we're seeking to remove from Section 4621 by repealing the subparagraph thereto are the relevant fees that we want to place essentially in this pot of non-coercive revenues to which Regulation 5.1 will relate. Therefore, the regulation itself, while it has been published earlier on the 25th of July, is not ultra vires any aspect of the law. And the amendment that we're seeking to make to the Merchant Shipping Law 2011 revision is simply to move the money from the coercive revenue pot into the non-coercive revenue pot, and that will make it subject to Regulation 5.1 as set out in the regulations which were published on the 25th of July. I think there must have been a review of these regulations and a conclusion that it could safely be published earlier than was originally intended.
Member from Easton.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Madam Chair, what I've just heard the Minister say is that this regulation is for non-coercive fees that is collected by the authority. My question then, on the 459 459 and 461. I think it's 462 that we're amending.
462.
4621.
A.
A. And I want us to look at this together, Mr. Minister. Are you telling me then the first registration of a ship is non-coercive? Are you telling me the registration of a demised charter ship transferred in is non-coercive? Are you telling me the registration in you or registration of a ship is non-coercive? Are you telling me the interim registration of a ship is non-coercive? The transfer or registration of a ship between British registers are non-coercive? Registration under the issue of a provisional certificate of registry, non-coercive. The registration of a ship under construction, non-coercive. And the registration of transfer or transmission of ownership of a ship, non-coercive. All fines imposed under this law is non-coercive. Any fees...
You're going beyond A now, sir.
Beyond A, that's true. That's B. The registration of the transfer or transmission of ownership of a ship to that one, which is 8. Are they all non-coercive?
Madam Chair,
Honorable Minister, you finished, member from Easton? Honorable Minister?
at this point, prior to the repeal of subparagraph 1A of section 462, they are coercive revenue measures and fees. 5.1 of the regulations relate to non-coercive revenue. So there's no connection between that regulation and the fees set out in 4621A at this point. Once 4621A, which the member has read out, which I read out earlier as well, once that is repealed, that is no longer in accordance with 4621 sums which are to be paid into the Treasury. And the fees for those can then be set by the Chief Executive Officer of the Maritime Authority in accordance with Regulation 5.1, because they are now not coercive revenue. They're non-coercive.
So,
Sorry, once this repeal is in effect.
understood. And you're telling me they cannot be considered coercive revenue. We are now saying that the registration of a ship is not coercive revenue.
Once we have repealed 4621A, they are not coercive revenue as set out therein.
But at the time this was gazetted, they were.
That's correct.
And we are saying that it was okay to gazette this.
We're saying that Regulation 5.1, sorry, Madam Chair, with your permission,
Go ahead, Minister.
we're saying that Regulation 5.1, as set out in these published regulations on the 25th of July, relate to non-coercive revenue. They do not, this amount that's set out in 4621A, or these amounts, or the fees in respect of these headings, do not relate to the revenue which is considered by Regulation 5.1. One is coercive at this point, the other one is non-coercive. Once we repeal 4621A, those headings, 4621A Romans 1 through 8, are no longer coercive revenue. to the best of my recollection, it is somewhere in that range, 140 to 150.
Madam Chair, I gotta leave this here because it's obvious I have some kind of thing going on in my head that don't accord with what I am hearing. And I will take it to another, for another opinion. Nevertheless, I shall leave the minister up to the devices that he chooses to succeed or destroy himself. Madam Chair, having said that, I can leave him now. Let me just briefly say that when I spoke earlier about the Attorney General not being in this, I was talking to him as the Attorney General with regards to this committee, and not as in his personal capacity. But I nevertheless apologize. I do not want to take personalities in here because I've never done that, because I don't want anyone to take such privileges over me, because I can get as mad as anyone else in that matter. But when I started addressing, I talked about disabusing the Attorney General. It was not him personally. It was him as the Attorney General. Poor choice of words. Him, you, or whatever the case may be. It meant him as the official member of the Attorney General, not him as Samuel Bulgin. I don't want nothing to do with that aspect of him when it's here. It's here to do with his post and his responsibilities within the chamber. So I want to get that clarified, that we don't leave here today with the Attorney General feeling like I was interchanging between the Attorney General and Samuel Bulgin. It was the Attorney General. And I apologize for the choice of him, we, you, whatever you and him I think I use. I don't want that to be misunderstood. It was the Attorney General, and I can disabuse him in his capacity there, but not from a personal perspective.
Madam Chair, just
Honorable Attorney General.
just to let the honourable member
You're speaking now as Attorney General, not Sam Bulgin.
yes.
Okay.
Interchangeably. just to let the honourable member knows two things. One, I do not hold it against him, and two, it doesn't change my admiration, deep admiration for him. And three, and number three, Madam Chair, he's still on my list for Christmas cards. Okay.
Madam Chair, I thank him very much for that. And he's on my everyday list for sympathy cards.
Before we engage in last one hit, the question is that clauses 1 and 2 stand part of the bill? All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Those against, no. The ayes have it. Clause 1 and 2 now stand part of the bill.
A bill for a law to amend the Merchant Shipping Law 2011 revision to make shipping registration fees payable to the Maritime Authority rather than to the Treasury, and to make provisions for incidental and connected matters.
The question is that the title now stand part of the bill. All those in favor, please say aye. Those against, no. The ayes have it. The clause now stand part of the bill. The question is that the 3 bills be reported to the House. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Those against, no. The ayes have it. The House will now resume. Please be seated. I'll call on the Honourable Deputy Premier to move the suspension of Standing Order 10-2 as we've gone beyond the hour of interruption.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, I move Standing Order 10-2 so we can work past the hour of interruption.
Question is Standing Order 10-2 be suspended to allow us to go beyond the hour of 4:30 p.m. All those in favour, please say aye.
Aye.
Those against, no.
No.
I believe the ayes have it. Accordingly, Standing Orders 10-2 is hereby suspended.
Report on bills. The Grand Court Amendment Bill 2014.
Honourable Attorney General.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, I beg to report that a bill entitled the Grand Court Amendment Bill 2014 was approved by a considered by a committee of this whole House and passed without amendment.
The bill has been duly reported and is now sat down for its third reading.
The Mutual Funds Amendment Bill 2014.
Honourable Minister for Financial Services.
Madam Chair, thank you. Madam Speaker, beg pardon. I have to report that a bill shortly entitled the Mutual Funds Amendment Bill 2014 was considered by a committee of the whole House and passed without amendment.
The bill has been duly reported and is set down for its third reading.
The Merchant Shipping Amendment Bill 2014.
Honourable Minister for Financial Services.
Madam Speaker, I beg to move that a bill entitled the Mutual Funds Amendment Bill 2014 be given a third reading and passed.
The bill has been duly reported and is set down for its third reading.
Third readings. The Grand Court Amendment Bill 2014.
Honourable Attorney General.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, I beg to move that the bill entitled the Grand Court Amendment Bill 2014 be given a third reading and passed.
The question is that a bill shortly entitled the Grand Court Amendment Bill 2014 be given a third reading and pass. All those in favour, please say aye. Those against, no. The ayes have it. The Grand Court Amendment Bill 2014 has been read a third time and is passed.
The Mutual Funds Amendment Bill 2014.
Honourable Minister for Financial Services.
Madam Speaker, I move that a bill shortly entitled the Mutual Funds Amendment Bill 2014 be given a third reading and passed.
The question is that a bill shortly entitled the Mutual Funds Amendment Bill 2014 be given a third reading and pass. All those in favour, please say aye. Aye. Those against, no. The ayes have it. The Mutual Funds Amendment Bill 2014 has been read a third time and is passed.
The Merchant Shipping Amendment Bill 2014.
Honourable Minister for Financial Services.
Madam Speaker, I beg to report that a bill shortly entitled the Merchant Shipping, that's correct. The Merchant Shipping Amendment Bill 2014 be given a third reading and passed.
The question is that the Merchant Shipping Amendment Bill 2014 has been read a third time and is passed. Sorry. The question is that the Merchant Shipping Amendment Bill 2014 has been given a third reading and passed. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Those against, no. The ayes have it. The Merchant Shipping Amendment Bill 2014 has been read a third time and is passed.
Motions. Government motion number 2, 2014-2015, amendment to the Development Plan 1997. Proposed rezoning Lower Valley Block 38E, parcel 282 and 283, registered to J&J Bear Limited. To be moved by the Honourable Minister of Planning, Land, Agriculture, Housing and Infrastructure.
I recognize Honourable Minister for Planning.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I rise to move Government Motion Number 2, 2014-15, entitled Amendment to the Development Plan 1997, Proposed Rezoning Low Valley Block 38E, parcels 282 and 283, formerly Block 38E, parcels 590 and 591, registered to J&J Bear Limited. And with your permission, Madam Speaker, I will just continue and read the motion.
Please proceed.
Thank you. Madam Speaker, just before I begin, I want to bring to members' attention that the proposed rezoning of 38E parcels 282 and 283, when everyone looks on their map, they will see that these parcels were formerly 590 and 591. In fact, they were 590 and 591 when the application for the rezone was made and have subsequently been changed by way of parcel numbers. Whereas on 9th April 2014, the Central Planning Authority considered an application for the rezoning of registration section Lower Valley Block 38E, parcels 590 and 591, from low density residential to hotel tourism, and whereas the CPA resolved to forward the application to amend the development plan to rezone the subject two parcels from low density residential to hotel tourism for the 60 days notification and advertising as per section 11 subsection 2 of the Development and Planning Law 2011 revision. And whereas the proposed amendments were duly advertised in the Cayman Compass on the 14th, the 17th, the 22nd, and the 25th day of April 2014, respectively, with the general public being invited to view the application at the Planning Department for comment. During the comment period, no letters of objection or representation were received on the proposed amendments. And whereas on the 25th of June 2014, the CPA again reviewed the application in light of the public consultation process, and it was resolved to forward the proposed amendment to the Ministry of Planning with the recommendation that a proposed amendment be forwarded via Cabinet to the Legislative Assembly. And whereas on 19th August 2014, Cabinet approved the rezoning application be referred on to the Legislative Assembly for consideration. Be it now therefore resolved that in accordance with Section 10(2)(b) of the Development and Planning Law, the Central Planning Authority hereby recommends and submits to the Legislative Assembly the following proposal for alteration to the Development Plan 1997, a summary and map of which are attached hereto. And be it further resolved that registration section Low Valley Block 38E, parcels 282 and 283 be rezoned from low-density residential to hotel tourism.
The motion has been duly moved and is open for debate. Does the Honourable Minister of Planning wish to speak to it?
Yes, Madam Speaker, I will make some short comments. Madam Speaker, members will have received copies of the map and the summary sheets, or summary sheet, I should say, which gives an explanation of exactly the purpose of this whole exercise. Let me just say, first of all, Madam Speaker, that this application is to do with a planned development in the Beach Bay area on the ocean front, and the developers, the proposed developers, have been working on this for quite some time now. In fact, the previous government were aware of the project, and there were discussions prior to the elections in 2013, and this government has since picked up from there. Madam Chair, the subject lands, that is the two parcels, are located near the southern end of Beach Bay Road. Parcel 282 is approximately 30 acres in size, and parcel 283 is approximately 18 acres. Both parcels are undeveloped, covered with natural vegetation, and presently zoned LDR, which is low density residential. Boundary Plan 40, Madam Speaker, if we look on the map, was gazetted in as far back as 1979. And as intended, it depicts a 50-foot public highway corridor going east to west for 2 miles along the coast, connecting Mans Road, which is in Bordentown Road, with Pedro Castle Road via an intersection with Beach Bay Road. So if we look on the boundary plan, we will see that the BP 40, the gazettal, goes straight through these two parcels. Madam Speaker, the developer is proposing to construct a hotel and a resort on the two subject parcels of this application and the adjoining land to the west, which on the map we will see is shaded in blue and which is already zoned hotel tourism. The footprint for the development which they plan cannot be accommodated by the parcels which are already zoned hotel tourism. So in order to accommodate the project, they have made this request for the rezoning, bearing in mind also, Madam Speaker, that if the two parcels in question are not rezoned, then it would certainly affect the density allowed on their application. So it is important for the project for the rezoning to take place. And I just want to make sure that everybody's with a clear understanding. The representatives from the District of Bordentown have consulted, I've talked with people, we've had no objections, and in discussions with the Cabinet, we think that as a project and its specific location, this would be a good thing, not only for the district, but for the tourism development of the country also. Madam Speaker, the BP 40, which is the gazetted road, negotiations are continuing with the developer, and they have indicated to us that they are quite happy to construct the section of that road which will go through their property. I have to say, Madam Speaker, that once the purchases are completed, the developers have indicated to us that they will be speaking to the NRA with the possibility of seeking within the boundaries of these two parcels to perhaps shift the road a little to the north to give them more property on the oceanfront side as to do with their development. So hence, while there's no indication at present, because we don't know exactly what that's to be, I just want to advise everybody that they have indicated this. Madam Speaker, having explained the whole process as the law requires, I just want to add, Madam Speaker, that while the government may not be minded presently as a matter of priority to continue that road going back to Pedro Castle, or to Pedro Castle Road, I should say, if we look on the map, we will see that the distance from the boundary, from the eastern boundary of 38E 283 to connect to Mans Road is not a huge distance. So once the development is taking place and the developers have built the road on the bound from the west to eastern boundary of these two properties, then it is government's intention to continue that road to Mans Road, which will give another access to the Beach Bay area besides the Beach Bay Road itself. Madam Speaker, there may be some who think that that road in itself is not important, and perhaps it is secondary in the order of priority, but if this development actually takes place, as it seems to be every intention that it will, we certainly don't want not to facilitate. In fact, we would like to encourage it. So it would, in our mind, make a lot of sense to extend the road out to Mans Road and perhaps also do some improvements to the Beach Bay Road itself. This, from all of the discussions we've had with the proposed developers, Madam Speaker, will certainly go a long way to creating employment for people within the district, and also it will increase room stock for stayover tourism. And Madam Speaker, it will also create the type of development which would have to be considered sustainable development, and in raw terms, in the immediate, once it gets going, to create work for people. Madam Speaker, the developers have, in their meetings, given clear indication that they are quite willing to sit down and to ensure that local employment is maximized at their facility, and also to give all the necessary training that our own Caymanians can actually serve them well in the post by being trained properly. I don't think there's much I can add to the introduction of the motion, Madam Speaker, and I think now it's simply a matter if there are any questions or if there are any contributions to the motion, and if I have to answer anything, then I will do so in my wind-up. I certainly would seek the support of the entire membership of this House for government motion number 2. Thank you.
Does any other member wish to speak? I recognize the Honourable Leader of the Opposition.
Madam Speaker, thank you. I'm just rising to give my support for the efforts the government is making on that project. When the minister said that it was something started before the last election, it's been in the works for some time, and I'm truly pleased to see it move a bit further, Madam Speaker, because I believed when that presentation was made to us that it was a development that would enhance our tourism product and bring in the right kind of visitor, the upscale visitor that we promote. And so, Madam Speaker, I am indeed happy and trusting that this is going to move along quicker now and smoother so that the developers can move further and faster. And I say faster because we know what the bureaucracy is like in our islands. But I am also waiting to see what the roadway, how the roadway between that area and Upper Manch Road will work. I believe it's a good thing. I believe that from the day that it was gazetted or planned years ago with the late national hero Jim Borden and the late Mr. Haig Borden. Sorry? Well, Madam Speaker, I hear somebody saying something about what happened, but I am glad that maybe we passed that and whatever problems that existed will now be overcome. I still say that I think it's a good thing that the roadway can move forward. If there was some problem with a particular area, I can tell you this, there's no road in Cayman that is straight. All we got to do is look at the last ones that were put in. They've got more roundabouts than any place else in the world. But it facilitates our well, Madam Speaker, I just hope that members will take in stride what I'm saying. That if there was a problem before, then that can be shifted. If it's a particular area that's affected, that can be, the roadway can be directed so that it fits the bill for the developer and get the road completed. I believe that it will work. I believe that it will enhance the area.
You're talking about the lower.
And I'm not too sure. I'm not too.
You're talking about the lower, not the windward.
I'm not too sure where the member is talking about.
East is easy.
But that planned development as a whole, the road going in that direction, I believe will enhance the whole area. There's still a lot of property there that is undeveloped, and certainly for a person like me that supports development, I'm certainly saying that I'm pleased that we are moving in the right direction, and that aspect of the road, one of these days, if it's a half mile left and government needs to complete it. I would hope that government will find the wherewithal to do it, to complete. Never mind the fact that perhaps that when we get to Mans Road, that will have to, some work will have to be done on that to enhance traveling, because of course it will be more traffic.
That's still not a great distance.
But it's not a long distance between where they will stop and where government would have to take up from. I just want to encourage the government to move forward. Madam Speaker, I thank you very much.
Does any other member wish to speak? The fourth elected member from the District of Bordentown.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I'll be brief, but I just wanted to thank the minister and his team for getting this motion to the House at the speed that they did, because I think it gives an indication of how important we think this type of development is for Bordentown. And I'm also extremely pleased to know that the Leader of the Opposition continues to support this project for the obvious reasons, the economic benefits that it will bring to Bordentown. And the last thing I would want to see is that this important project become a political football and hence suffer from delays and so back and forth and so forth. I am pleased to rise to offer my support to this development. I think the minister has been working along with the 4 Bordentown reps as fast as possible to get this project moving. And the road itself, the importance of that road to Bordentown is extremely significant. It's something that we talked about when we were campaigning, actually, about having to open up central Bordentown and expose it to the benefits that this development would bring later on. There are going to be tremendous amount of opportunities for Bordentown entrepreneurs and residents, jobs, retail opportunities. The list goes on. So this project does have our full support, and I can assure this honorable House that we will, the 4 Bordentown reps and the government will be working extremely hard to see it become a reality. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Recognize the first elected member from Bordentown.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Just very briefly to offer my support. I know my colleagues have been working with the minister and with, on occasion, met with the developer. I know the member from East End was talking about the western part of this gazetted road, and I was going to comment on it, where I'm not sure how long ago that was gazetted, but if they have to go through, I would call it a precipice. It would probably take all of the fill out of Mexico to bring that up to level. But as we have alluded here, that, you know, and the Leader of the Opposition has said these roads can be changed to swing it around it, but that has always been my concern if they talked about bringing the road where it was originally gazetted, but I'm sure that can change. But I know my other 3 colleagues from Bordentown would welcome something like this, and this is something that would be good for all of our people, not only in the District of Bordentown and the eastern districts, but the entire Cayman Islands.
Does any other member wish to speak? Does any other member wish to speak? Does any other member wish to speak? If not, I'll call on the Honourable Minister for Planning if he wishes to exercise the right of reply.
Madam Speaker, after all that has transpired today, I think there's nothing more for me to say with this one, but to say thank you to the members for either their obvious or tacit support. Thank you.
The question is, be it now therefore resolved that in accordance with Section 10(2)(b) of the Development and Planning Law 2011 revision, the Central Planning Authority hereby recommends and submits to the Legislative Assembly the following proposal for alteration to the Development Plan 1997, a summary and map of which are attached hereto, and be it further resolved that registration section Low Valley, Block 38E, parcels 282 and 283 be rezoned from low-density residential to hotel tourism. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Those against, no. The ayes have it. Accordingly, government motion number 2, 2014-2015 is duly passed. Is it the intention of the House to revert back to private member's motion, or can we have a motion for the adjournment?
Madam Speaker,
Honorable Leader of the Opposition.
thank you. I understood that we would move to private members' motion. At least I would hope that I can deal with the first one.
Madam Clerk, item 6.
Other business, private member motions. Private member motion number 1 of 2014-2015, amendment to the immigration law 2013 revision, to be moved by the Honorable Leader of the Opposition, the first elected member for West Bay.
Honorable Leader of the Opposition.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I beg to move private members' motion number 1 of 2014-2015, standing in my name, which reads as follows. Whereas the Immigration Law 2013 revision was amended on the 24th of October 2013, and whereas the provision for specialist caregivers was removed, and whereas in our aging population, it is our elderly who are most impacted by the removal of the specialist caregivers, be it now therefore resolved that the government consider reintroducing the provision in the immigration law for specialist caregivers or a similar provision giving the same possibility for our senior citizens who need such constant care to keep the caregiver they have been acquainted with for some years.
The motion have been duly moved. Is there a seconder?
Yes, Madam, I beg to second the motion.
Thank you. I recognize the Honorable Leader of the Opposition. Do you wish to speak to your motion, sir?
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I will try to be brief with this. Madam Speaker, this matter of the specialist caregiver is of much concern to many people in our community. Those of us still fortunate to have an aged parent or other person close to us can well appreciate just how well that law assisted people. In some cases, with sick, aged people, parents or other loved ones, we have to have sometimes 2 such caregivers. These aged individuals, Madam Speaker, are not used to, cannot tolerate drastic changes and new faces around them most times. Most times they are, some of them in early stages or full-blown Alzheimer's. So those of you who don't have to contend with that situation can only imagine, Madam Speaker, just what people must go through to give quality care to an aged and invalid person. Most times, Madam Speaker, in their state of Alzheimer's or whatever sickness they might have, they fully always recognize their caregiver and most times are agreeable with those caregivers, sometimes more than they agree with the children if they have. How many cases of the same situation, Madam Speaker, could or do exist in our islands? I'm not sure, but I know that there are many people in the same position, Madam Speaker. And so, Madam Speaker, on behalf of all those elderly and their families, and I just don't want anyone to believe I'm talking about an elderly person that has Alzheimer's. They could have a caregiver for many different reasons. And so, on behalf of all those elderly and their families, I hope the government would be disposed to agree to the motion and try to find a way to deal with this real need in our community. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Does any other member wish to speak? I recognize the Honorable Premier.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, I am pleased to be able to say to this House and to the Leader of the Opposition in particular that this is a matter that the government is already considering. We know the challenges that are posed by caregivers, long-time caregivers, having to leave someone that they've been looking after who's very ill or who is very aged, and the challenges that that poses for the families and for the person that is being looked after. As always, Madam Speaker, the great struggle is to reconcile how the desire to have this person stay on long term with the concerns about how those people will fit into the immigration regime that we have, which has essentially a graduated policy in place whereby you come on work permit, you then apply for permanent residence. If you get permanent residence, you then move on ultimately to get Caymanian status and so forth and so on. And one of the great issues with this is that, of course, these caregivers are generally some of the lower paid persons in employment in the Cayman Islands, and the chances of them being able to meet their permanent residence requirements, particularly as they relate to assets and so forth, are quite slim in most instances. And so the struggle for a number of governments, and this one as well, is how we balance these issues, because what we have to be careful about is persons being able to claim, by virtue of the length of time they've been here, some right of security to tenure long term. And in many of the instances, as these people age, it will become more difficult for them to be able to look after themselves, and one of the concerns is that they will add to the ever-growing list of persons for whom government has to find the means to provide for. And so, Madam Speaker, the government is, as I said, very sensitive to this issue. We too have heard the concerns and the pleas of the people who are affected when caregivers have to be rolled over. And so we are looking to find a way to be able to address this. We have a number of other immigration law amendments that we are considering, and we are hopeful that a way will be found to deal with this by the time those amendments are ready to be brought to this House. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Does any other member wish to speak? The first elected member from the District of Bordentown.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I'm pleased to hear our Premier indicating acceptance to this motion. I know both the Leader of the Opposition and I talked about it back in October last year, when I had so many representations from especially the elderly in the District of Bordentown. And I always draw an example when several years ago, another one who is now deceased was so attached to that caregiver, and there was restrictions to the law, but I did go to the Leader of the Opposition, who was the Leader of Government Business at that time, and we were able to get that through, and she was so happy, and you know, because she was even to the stage where she wanted to travel to Jamaica with her helper until the necessary time. But I know that this government, our aim, and what we've talked about, helping our people, this will go a long way. I know there are a number of the people that will be glad to hear this. Some of them had to go through the rollover, but I'm sure that when we help people, there is an exceptional time where my belief in my faith that God will provide for a government that looks at people like this. And I don't really think it's going to be that huge amount of people that will fall into this category. But for whatever reason, that peace of mind, Madam Speaker, that we can give to our seniors at that time, and I've seen some of them just crying, and anyway, that we can encourage them and make them happy. But I just want to say thanks to the Premier for listening to us and understanding. And once again, it's about our people that we represent. And any way that we can make that age group of people happier, we can and will be blessed for it. Thank you.
Does any other member wish to speak? Does any other member wish to speak? Final call. Does any other member wish to speak? The second elected member from the District of Bordentown, Honorable Minister for Health. Sorry.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. And I rise in that capacity, really, just to say a few words as Minister of Health. It certainly is something that I think we all, when it was changed, we all didn't feel quite right about it, and it is good that we've been able to discuss it. I thank the Leader of Opposition for bringing it back to the table, and it is very important that we find a way. I think that we can find a way to make this work. As the Premier has said, it's not without its challenges. I don't think that the numbers are really that great, and although these people are not working for free, I think that the service that they're providing to this community and giving distinguished care to our elderly is important to me. And I think that if the country has to bear somewhat of a burden for that, it's a quid pro quo as far as I'm concerned. And what we have to be careful of, however, is that we don't get into a case where the dependence. Then I think that is where we have to work and massage this to make it work. So I know from my own experience with my mother, as I said to caucus, she had a helper of some 30 years. And when she got down to her last, and in the times when, in the stages where Mama got sick and really needed someone to be around her, she didn't want anyone else around but that lady. And I know if I'd had, well, thank God she had status, she's been here a long time, but just an example, if she was someone who had to leave my mother at that stage, I don't know what I would have done. That was the person she wanted around her, and that's just my own experience. So I know it's important, and I know the first elected member from Bordentown feels very deeply about this, and had a lot of representation on it back last year. So I'm very happy that we have found a way to offer our support to this motion, and once again I congratulate all involved. Thank you.
Does any other member wish to speak? Does any other member wish to speak? Final call. Does any other member wish to speak? If not, I'll call upon the Honourable Leader of the Opposition if he wishes to exercise the right of reply.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Just to rise to say thank you to the government for being willing to readdress the situation anew. Madam Speaker, the government has to address the matter so that the long-term effect is taken into consideration, and that there is a balance. As the Honourable Minister of Health just said, Madam Speaker, this government, as all governments, must realize that there are situations in the islands that we can't get out of, permanent residency or otherwise. We must realize that we make provisions to give Caymanian status by way of a motion in exceptional circumstances. And so this category of immigration status or position, Madam Speaker, is an exception and warrants the government finding a way to address it. And so the government, in regards to situations that hang on to that kind of problem, the government is the government. It can address any situation and put in place reasonable safeguards so that the government can feel that they have addressed it in a sense that does not leave themselves open to any abuse. I want to thank the first elected member from Bordentown, because he always rises to the occasion when it comes to these matters of addressing issues for the elderly. And from the day that I was responsible for social services and he came and took over social services, he carried on. I don't think he made many changes in the way we dealt with the elderly, except to try to enhance the positions that we had put forward. And so I want to thank him for his support, and to thank my colleagues, the seconder and my other colleagues from SB for their support. And again, I want to thank the Premier for being willing to look at the problem again in a different way. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
The question is that be it now therefore resolved that the government consider reintroducing the provision in the immigration law for specialist caregivers or a similar provision given the same possibility for our senior citizens who need such constant care to keep the caregiver they have been acquainted with for some years. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Those against, no. The ayes have it. Private members' motion number 1, 2014-2015 is accordingly passed. Can we have an indication from the government bench, indeed the House General, whether we can entertain a motion for the adjournment now? Honorable Premier.
Madam Speaker, I'm happy for the House to continue, for the Honorable Leader of the Opposition to move the motion and perhaps present it, and then we can continue with it tomorrow. Or if he would rather that we leave it until tomorrow evening, then perhaps we can do that, whatever. Are you gonna be here? Okay, so he can, if he's ready to present it, he can go ahead and then we can respond tomorrow.
Honorable Premier, can we have a motion then for the adjournment?
Madam Speaker, I move the adjournment of this Honorable House until 10 a.m. tomorrow morning.
The question is that this Honorable House be adjourned until 10 a.m. tomorrow morning. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Those against, no. The House is accordingly adjourned until 10 a.m. tomorrow morning.